Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I do appreciate you changing up your schedule for me. I know the time's a little bit different here. It's 7:30 in the evening on a Monday night. This is actually Labor Day in the United States. It's our last holiday before everybody goes. My daughters go back to school tomorrow, so big day over here. It's really a pleasure to be here. And one of the things I jumped at the opportunity was to be able to talk to you guys about one of my passion projects, and that's Windows Admin Center. So Windows Admin Center is a technology that I've been fighting for internally for a very long time, and I know that it's still relatively new. A lot of you may not have heard about it. If I was in the room, I would actually ask for a show of hands for how many of you have already started using it, or how many of you have not started using it.
Let's ask the question, Jeff. Let's ask the question. How many in the room have actually started using it? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 hands up out of a room of about 26 people.
Excellent, thank you. So that tells me we've got some work to do, because until every single hand goes up and everybody tells me they're using it, that tells me I've got some work to do evangelizing it. Admin Center is awesome, and I want to spend actually a lot of time demoing it for you so I don't have to talk about it, so you can actually see it in action. Whether you're interested in hybrid, whether you're interested in hyperconverged, or whether you're interested in any brand new Windows Server technologies, the GUI is all going to be in Admin Center. So let me get right into it. And the first thing I'm going to start with very briefly is just, you've probably seen this slide 1,000 times, but for those who haven't, very quickly, when people ask me, what is the Microsoft Cloud strategy? What is it? I could show you a version of this slide that we've been showing for years now. It's actually very straightforward. Certainly it starts with what we're doing in Azure, where we have PaaS, SaaS, IaaS. You can run VMs, you can run platform as a service, you can run software as a service. And most everyone I talk to these days saying, yes, we're on Office 365, or we're on that journey with Office 365, that type of thing. However, at the same time, one of the things, and in fact, let me ask for a show of hands in the room if you wouldn't mind doing this one more time. One thing I like to know is, in terms of your organization's strategy, would you say that your organization's strategy is public cloud only? So you're only going to run in the public cloud. Are you going to be private cloud only? So you're going to only run things on premises, or are you hybrid? So show of hands, how many of you are public only? You're not going to do any servers on premises. Any hands up?
It's about 2.
2. All right, and how many of you are going to do all private cloud? No public cloud at all whatsoever?
No hand.
No hand. Okay, and now how many of you are hybrid? And that's where all the hands go up. And that's exactly what happens every time I ask this question, because everybody tells me, no, Jeff, of course I want to take advantage of what the cloud has to offer, but I've got a bunch of workloads that are going to stay on premises for the foreseeable future. And at Microsoft, we believe hybrid is a durable state. We're going to be shipping hybrid and on-premises things long after I retire. And just in case you weren't wondering, I'm not retiring anytime soon. So on the right-hand side, we have Azure Stack. And Azure Stack is literally an extension of Azure. This is shipped as an appliance. This runs in your data center. It's not Azure-like. It's not Azure similar. It's Azure the same. So if you want to build new cloud-native apps that can run on premises and then deploy them in Azure without any code change, that's how you do it on the right. That's with Azure Stack. Now, keep in mind that Azure Stack, again, it's shipped as an appliance. In fact, you're not an admin on the machine. You're an operator of the cloud. That's what Azure Stack is all about. And in case you're wondering, I do get questions, people asking me, so what compares to Azure Stack? Well, actually, nothing compares to Azure Stack. It's actually its own category. VMware or OpenStack or any of those things, there is nothing that compares to Azure Stack, because it's literally Azure running in your data center. On the left-hand side, we've got Azure Stack HCI and what we're doing with Windows Server. And this is about delivering, for your traditional apps. So if you want to run VMs, you want to run containers, when someone says, hey, Jeff, I get Azure Stack, that's really cool, but I'm just not there yet. I need to run traditional workloads. I need to be an admin on the box, or I want to be able to run SQL, .NET, containers, all of that. That's what Azure Stack HCI is all about. And most importantly, these things can all connect into Azure so you can create these awesome hybrid scenarios. So Last thing I want to point out is 91% of enterprises see themselves operating in the hybrid cloud for the foreseeable future. And so the reason why I ask for the show of hands is because literally I ask this question wherever I go. I asked this question last year at Ignite with 2,000 people. I had the largest attended session Ignite, and asked the same question. I maybe had 10 people for all public cloud. I maybe had 12 people for all private cloud, and then the 1,900, 70 whatever hands went up was for hybrid. That's what everybody says they're doing. So, Admin Center. This is what we're going to be focusing on today. And so if you haven't seen this, or if this looks new to you, this is really the important thing to understand. So first of all, if any of you happen to have a license of Windows or Windows Server, which you all do, guess what? You already own this. There's no additional license, there's no additional cost, there's no additional charge. You literally already own this. So you see the download link there, http://aka.ms whack download. You should be downloading this immediately. And if you're not already using this, you're going to want to start using this immediately. So what you're looking at right now is actually Admin Center and one of the brand new features in Windows Server 2019 called the Storage Migration Service. So one of the things that's really important for you to understand, and I cannot underline this enough, is that if you're looking for any new features in Windows Server 2019, for example, Storage Migration Service or System Insights, if you're looking for any new features ever in Windows Server, don't look for it in Windows Server. You're not going to find it. We're not building any MMCs. We're not building any more UI in Windows Server. I promise that I will work to have any program manager fired who builds new UI in Windows Server. All of the UI in Windows Server from here on out is in this product, Admin Center. And so this is so you can run it, install it, manage it on your laptop, and manage all of your servers remotely. And guess what? It's simple, it's fast, it runs in a browser. And I'm going to demo all of this for you. So you're going to see this in action. And on top of that, this is not only just a product for management, but it's actually a platform. So you notice right below it says build your own plugins. We have made this a management platform. So if you notice in the left-hand column here, it says tools, and you see overview, certificates, devices, events, files, firewall, and more. Every one of those is a plugin. So when we launched Windows Admin Center about 18 months ago, there was about 6 of those, and then 7, and then 10, and then 12. And in fact, there's so many now that there's a scroll bar. And we just continue to add more and more and more of these. And this is shipped on its own schedule. It's not shipped in Windows Server, and that's on purpose. And the reason why is because I can continue to give you more features very quickly. In fact, we iterate on Admin Center every couple of months. All right. So what is Windows Admin Center? So if you're used to managing Windows Server traditionally with the GUI, you're probably used to this. You're probably using all of these different tools: Task Manager, Control Panel, Windows Firewall, Failover Cluster, Hyper-V Manager, Services, Settings, Server Manager, Registrator, Disk Management, and more. And in fact, we've talked with many of you, and on general, most people tend to have between 6 and 12 of these different tools open at any one time or at the ready. That's what it looks like if you're managing Windows Server with the GUI. Of course, if you're managing Windows Server running Server Core, then it looks like this. And of course, everybody goes, oh no, that's scary. I'm never going to do that because I don't have any of my tools. And so one of the things we've been trying to do for the longest time is to actually get more people to adopt Server Core. But of course, if usability and complexity makes it difficult, no one's going to deploy it. So what do we want to do? We want to make it easy to manage both of these with Admin Center. So whether you're running Windows Server with the full desktop or whether you're running Windows Server with Server Core, it doesn't matter, because you're running all of these remotely on your laptop, fully remoted, but with this beautiful interface, okay? And so with Admin Center, it's about being integrated, modernized, and simplified. And so what does this mean in terms of the tools? So if you look, first of all, it manages servers and clusters. And you'll notice, by the way, this isn't a 2019 thing or even a 2016 thing. It actually goes all the way back to 2012. So I can manage your 2012. Now, 2008 R2, technically, we can manage a little bit. I tend to not talk about 2008 R2 because, quite honestly, it's so old. We can't manage everything. It's a very limited subset of things that we can manage because 2008 R2 is so old. And you'll notice 2008 isn't even on the list because it's so old. But if you're running 2012 and later, we got you covered. So what are the tools that we have? Well, here are just some of them. Overview, certificates, devices, events, files, firewall, etc. And again, you're going to see a bunch of these in action. So we want to bring all these tools together. I want to get rid of this world where you have to have 6 or 10 of these open. In fact, I want a single pane of glass that has all of these. And in fact, it runs in a browser. So it's very easy, just requires Edge or Chrome. So let's get into it. What does Admin Center actually look like? So here is Windows Admin Center. And you can see I've got a few servers open. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on one of these servers called JW5. I'm going to click on the server, and you can see right off the bat the computer name, the domain, the OS, the version, the number of logical processors, the CPU, the memory usage, all in one view. This is actually Task Manager system properties and a bunch of different things in one quick, easy overview. If you want to go further and take a look at, for example, events, all I have to do is click on events and say I want to look at the security events for this server. I click on security. You'll notice there's 143,000 items. Now, normally I'd be a little concerned to see 143,000 security items. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on the filter button, and I'm actually going to filter out the informational and verbose, because in the events it's actually very chatty. We want to log all of the security events. And so I only want to see the critical, the errors, and the warnings, the things that I really need to be careful about. So I'm going to click on apply, and now you can see I've gone from 143,000 to 0. So what's really cool about Admin Center is, first of all, people look at it and I show that and they go, okay, Jeff, that looks really cool, but you know what? You're going to require that I install agents on the server. Nobody's going to let me install an agent on a server, so this is not going to go anywhere. No, this is completely agentless. Everything you're seeing here is completely agentless. It's actually interacting with the servers via remote PowerShell. So this is remote PowerShell, and in the case that there isn't a PowerShell available, we'll actually resort to WMod. But PowerShell is pretty much plugged into server, so we're covered. So once we tell people that this is actually layered on top of PowerShell, the next obvious question is, well, that's really cool. You know, it would be cool if we could actually see the PowerShell. So in this upper right-hand corner, we actually put a PowerShell button. This was actually one of the first feature requests we had from customers. And so we put it in here. And so if I click on the PowerShell button, here's the raw PowerShell. So here is literally the PowerShell we are using in the events tool. And you can see it, you can copy it, you can paste it, you can put it into your own automation, into your own scripts, and use it for Cloud Shell or in your PowerShell or whatever. So very powerful, and we're even giving you the automation. On top of that, as I mentioned before, this is a platform in and of itself. So every one of those items on the left-hand side of the tools menu is a plugin. So what did we do? We've actually made this available to third parties. So if I click here on the settings button and go on over here to extensions, you can actually see here's data on, here's Fujitsu, there's QCT, there's peer storage, and there's more. And so, for example, if I actually install this Fujitsu plugin and I connect to a Fujitsu server, it actually opens up a whole bunch of new information about the hardware. Processor speed, fan speed, UEFI firmware version, PCI slots, what's in there, all of those things. Readily available right here in Admin Center. So what you're seeing is not only the OS, but we are plugging in all of our hardware vendors as well. So Fujitsu's in here, Lenovo's here, NEC's here, Dell is about to be in here, HP is just about to be in here, but by the end of the year, we're going to have every server vendor in there. And we even have some of the smaller boutique OEMs. For example, there's one called Thomas Kren in Europe, which is really cool. They've actually jumped on it and already built a plugin for their German appliances. Data On, one of my favorite OEMs, is also plugged in here and readily available. So that's just a couple things just a quick to whet your appetite about the overview of Admin Center. Before I go on, any quick questions?
I've got one. You mentioned the PowerShell. Is there a recommended version or variant of PowerShell you need for the client and server?
Nope, this is just using standard PowerShell. I mentioned this will manage all the way back to 2012. One thing that is important to note is if you're using Windows Server 2016 or later, Admin Center just works out of the box. If you're using 2012 or 2012 R2, there is one prerequisite. You need to install Windows Management Framework 5.1 because that does update some of the management components that Admin Center needs. But that really isn't too much of a challenge for most people. In fact, most people have already done it if they're managing their servers. So Let me talk about how it can be deployed. Because now that I've shown you this, one of the questions people always ask is, okay, what are the requirements for this? Do I need to install databases? Do I need to install web servers? What's going on here? So Windows Admin Center is actually very light. It's a 60 megabyte installer. I can install it on my laptop and be managing servers in less than 1 minute. Let me say that one more time. I can download it, install it, and be managing servers in less than 1 minute. It's that fast. Okay. This is not, you don't need SQL. You don't need a web server. It's a fully standalone installer. Yeah, I heard a wow in there. Exactly. So I can be running this on my laptop. And generally when I do demos, in fact, all the demos you're seeing, these are actually done on my laptop. But you can install these, and I'll show you different deployment options in a second. And again, there are no agents installed. So there's nothing required on the target server, because I know that can be a pain point. Nobody's going to install agent. Nobody wants to install agents on their Exchange or their SharePoint or their SQL or their custom apps or whatever, because they're always afraid it's going to do something to change the configuration of the machine. So this is all happening using PowerShell and WMI over WinRM. If you're using just, again, on your laptop, all you need is a modern browser, which can be Edge or Chrome or the new Edge Chromium, Edgeium, everyone's calling it, or Credge, whatever they want to call it. And by the way, I should point out that an internet connection is not required. So this does not require that you're connected to Azure. It does not require that you're connected to the internet. As long as I can install it on my laptop and I have a network to my servers, none of this needs to be attached to the internet at all. You can be completely on an air-gapped network, and this all just works flawlessly. So if you want to publish the DNS and open a port in your firewall, you can access it from anywhere as well. So again, requires Edge or Chrome. It installs on server 2019, 2016, or 10. Again, the recommended best practice is that you actually install it and manage it remotely, and I'll talk to you about the different options in just a second. And again, it manages from 2019 all the way back. And for folks that have managed using RSAT tools in the past, we don't have some of the limitations that we had in the past. For example, if you're using RSAT and you were managing Windows 2008 R2, you had to run RSAT on Windows 7. If you were running RSAT and managing 2012, you had to run RSAT on Windows 8. You needed Windows 8.1 for Server 2012 R2, and you needed Windows 10 for Server 2016. With Admin Center, we don't have any of those limitations. You install Admin Center, and it literally manages all the way back, again, to 2012, and even limited back to 2008 R2, all using the same version of Admin Center. You don't have any of the hard pairing that we had in the past. So that actually gets rid of that problem. So here's what the different options are. Number one, you can literally just install this on your laptop, install on your desktop, and manage your servers remotely. This is what I do. I do lots of demos, so I just like to run it on my laptop. And just to give you an idea, Admin Center is not chatty at all. I've actually done demos in Germany and Japan, managing servers running in the US in my office under my desk. So it's very lightweight, and you can run it on your laptop. Every so often someone will come to me and say, Jeff, I'm in an education environment and we have Chromebooks or we have Macs or whatever, and I don't have a Windows laptop that I can run this on readily available. Well, you can actually install Admin Center on one of the managed nodes. So if you've got 3 servers, for example, you could simply install Admin Center on one of those. And this, we call it gateway mode. And all you need on the client is Chrome or Edge, and you would actually access Admin Center running on one of the server nodes. Because Admin Center is so lightweight, it's not a big deal. Then you start to get into bigger environments when people say, well, Jeff, I'd like to share Admin Center with a number of people. For example, I've got a team or a test and dev team. So in this case, you could actually install it on a dedicated server and make this a dedicated gateway server. And this could be 2016 or 2019, and then you could have multiple people. You don't have to install Admin Center on your laptop. You install it on a dedicated gateway server, and then you can share connections, you can share servers and stuff like that. Well, then I get people go, oh my gosh, this is great. We've been using it in test dev, but now I want to roll this in production. If we're going to roll this in production, it's got to be highly available. Well, if that's the case, then you can cluster the gateway service, and now you have a highly available gateway service. And I run into a lot of people who have literally moved through this entire production, who actually started on the far left in Windows 10 desktop, moved to the dedicated gateway, and now are running the highly available gateway server because people have just found Admin Center to be just an indispensable tool. And I've run into customers now who are literally managing thousands of servers with Admin Center. And again, you already own this. This is included in the cost of your Windows and Windows Server license. If you want to manage multiple environments, so this is now a question I'm getting a lot more of. So environment A, let's assume environment A is Seattle, environment B is San Francisco, and environment C is New York. I get questions all the time. Should I just install it and run it off my laptop? Well, probably not. You're probably going to want an installation at each location. That way you can share it with multiple people. So the recommendation would be, install Admin Center in each environment. Again, it's super lightweight, and that way you can just connect to that gateway. And so the proximity between the gateway and the servers you're managing is localized. This also means you can also mix and match. So one of the things I haven't mentioned yet is the beauty of Admin Center is I can manage your servers wherever they're located, no matter what they're running on. So if you're running Windows Server on physical machine, no problem. Is it running on a virtual machine, Hyper-V, VMware? I don't care. Is it running in Azure and Azure IaaS? Absolutely. So wherever Windows Server is running, physical, virtual, on-prem, or in the cloud, it works. So I have instances in my Admin Center where I'm literally managing servers under my desk, back at home in my house, and up in Azure IaaS, all from Windows Admin Center, all from the same tool. So it's extremely flexible. The only requirement is, of course, that I have some sort of network connectivity that can actually reach the server. That's the only thing required. All right. So let's switch. Let's get into how Admin Center is being used for new features. So as I mentioned earlier, all the new features for Windows Server from here on out that require a GUI are being built into Admin Center. And there's no better example than the awesome new storage migration service that we've introduced. So let me explain to you kind of the problem that we've been seeing for a while. Customers tell us you've got data on file servers. And maybe you got some file servers on 2008, 2008 and you want to migrate them on to new file servers. Maybe you want to move them up to the cloud at some point, but right now you just know that 2008 is going to be going into support really soon and you want to migrate the data. Well, it's not just copying files and folders. That's actually relatively super simple. We all know how to do that, whether it's robocopy or literally copying files. It's more than that. It's all data must transfer, but all shares and their configuration must transfer. All the file system security's got to transfer. In-use files have to transfer. If you're the operator, but you actually are not don't have access to do the transfer, how do you do that? You need to move your local users and groups. Also, data attributes, whether using encryption, compression, alternate data streams, deduplication, that's got to all transfer. And then finally, most importantly, is network addressing and computer naming. So what we have seen is people will have written an application, they wrote an app 10 years ago, and this app is actually saving its data on a file server. Well, people don't know, maybe they don't have the source code, maybe they don't have the installation media, maybe they don't have the documentation. All I know is, Jeff, I have an application that's saving to a file server. I don't know how it's finding that file server on the network. Is it by name? Is it by DNS? Is it by FQDN? Is it by IP address? I don't know. So what ends up happening is people basically say, you know what? We're going to leave that file server running forever. And we're just going to create a new file server because we're afraid to just copy things over and turn off the old file server because we think things are going to break or we know things are going to break. So really, you need to not only migrate all of the data, but all of this metadata, computer naming, all has to come along with it. Truly, migration has to get everything. So to solve this problem, we came up with the storage migration service. This is a brand new service built into Windows Server 2019, and it allows you to migrate unstructured data from anywhere into Azure or into modern Windows Server like 2016 or 2019. It's fast, it's consistent, it's scalable, and it has this beautiful graphical workflow, of course, through Windows Admin Center. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, you'll notice it says it migrates from Windows Server 2003. That's not a typo. The SMB, this storage migration team was actually written by the team that owns the file server and SMB at Microsoft. There is no better data migration tool that has ever been written ever. because this is written by the team that actually knows this better than anybody else. And so we actually went all the way back and even tested Server 2003, because if anybody still has 2003 file servers lying around, we want to help them get that migrated off onto a modern server. And so this is built into Windows Server 2019, both standard and data center, and will migrate any version later than 2003 to 2016 or 2019. It works in 3 phases. First, let's assume you've got an old server. The first thing it does is the storage migration inventories your old file server. It gets everything it needs to know. How many CPUs, how many NICs, how many disks, how many volumes, SMB share settings, everything it needs to know to migrate to the new server. The second phase, it actually transfers. So what it does is it creates pairings from the old server to the new server, volumes, everything it needs to do, and then it actually performs the transfer. Then it gets to the third phase called the cutover phase. And the cutover phase is actually where I consider a whole bunch of magic. Because like I said, this is where the new server is made to look exactly like the old server. So if the old server, your old Windows Server 2003 file server was called FS01, after this storage migration service, the new server will actually be renamed FS01, have the same exact IP address, so it looks exactly the same as the old file server on the network. Then the old file server, we actually give it a new name, a new IP address, so you can turn it off, take it off the network, and stick it in the closet until you decide when you want to destroy it. But the new file server looks exactly like the old file server, except it's now running on 2019. It's probably running on much faster hardware. Instead of spinning disks and limitations of the old hardware, you're now running on flash on a brand new server. So rather than explaining all of this, let me show you what the storage migration service looks like. And again, let me start off by saying everything you're seeing here is an admin center. So you'll notice this beautiful UI, that 3 phases I talked about: inventory, transfer, and cutover. There it is right there. You notice all right here in Admin Center, and I'm not going to leave Admin Center a single time. Well, I will one time, but you'll see why. So let's go ahead and start a new job. And just to make this extra difficult, I'm actually going to migrate 2 file servers, not even 1, 2 file servers simultaneously. So we're going to call this demo. And the first thing it's going to require is that I put in my administrative credentials, because obviously I have to be an administrator to do this. And so here's my username and password. I'm typing that in. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I need to inventory the 2 servers, my 2 old servers that I'm going to migrate to my 2 new servers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a device. So I'm going to click here on add, and I'm going to type in the first name, which is FS01. And now I'm going to add a second device. This is FS02. And you can see I'm going to start a scan. And so now I'm scanning these servers. I'm getting all the information I need to know about these file servers. What OS are they running? How many NICs? How many volumes? Are they using compression or encryption? Everything I need to know to be successful for this process. And so now when I click on FS01, it will show me, oh yeah, here are all the shares. You can see the names, the paths, the types, the size, the number of files, everything I need to know about FS01 right here. And if you want to see everything it actually checked out when it did the inventory, you can see, am I using any encryption? Here are the security descriptors. Am I using other things? So if I click on FS02, you'll see here's the second one. Here's the configuration for this second server. You can see it's running Windows Server 2008 R2 Enterprise Edition. It's called FS02. You can see the domain it's on, the OS. You can see it has 4 volumes. It has 1 network adapter. If I go ahead and click on network adapter, you can see, yep, it's got 1, and here are all of the volumes. So everything I need to see for the old devices. So now we're going to set up the new servers. So everything so far, all I've done so far is typed in my creds and inventoried my old 2 servers. Now I'm going to transfer these to 2 new servers. And again, I've got to type in my creds for that. And now I'm going to type in the names of the 2 new servers that we're going to migrate these to. So SMS 2019-02, we're going to scan it. And you'll notice after we scan it, it automatically maps all the volumes for me. So you can see C on the old volume maps to C on the new one, D on the old one maps to D on the new one, E on the old one, etc. If I want to remove a share from a transfer, I can do that. But you can see we've done all the work for you. We've done all of the intelligence for you. I click on next, and I'm going to do the same exact thing for the second server. So this is the second new server. We're going to add that destination device because, again, I'm mapping the old second server to the new second server. We're going to scan the device. And again, you'll see, yep, it's done all the mapping for me. And before we do anything, it's going to ask me, do you want to checksum all the files? We can literally checksum every single file if you want. It'll take a little bit longer, but we can if you want. We can put in retry logic if we want, but we're going to just go with all the defaults. And the next thing before we actually do any copying of data is we're going to validate this. So we're going to validate that I have everything I need to do to be successful to copy the data from servers 1 and 2 to the new servers 1 and 2. And we show you everything that we're testing. We make sure that we have enough space, that we have enough privileges, that we have everything we need to do to be successful. Since everything passed, we're going to click on Start Transfer. And so now we are actually copying from the 2 old servers to the 2 new servers. If I click on the storage migration service, you can see right here on the front page, here's the running jobs. First one is already done. The second one, FSO2, is in process right now. It's copying at about 106 megabits per second. Megabytes per second. There's 79 megabytes per second. Just to be super transparent, we kept these file servers pretty small. We didn't need to sit here and stare at a gas gauge, so we kept these pretty small. But you can see we're just about done, 133 megabytes per second, and just like that, we have done the transfer. Now we get to one of my favorite features called the transfer log. So what happens when somebody in marketing comes and says, hey, I can't find that file. I think when you guys moved stuff over to the new server, you forgot some of my files. You guys messed up my file server. Well, what the transfer log does, it actually exports a CSV file that you can open up in Excel, and it shows you every single file name, the path, the size, the attributes, the creation date. So when someone says in marketing, I couldn't find that file, you say, oh no, I found it for you. You just happen to be looking in the long directory because I can easily find everything in Excel spreadsheet. So we've got you all covered here with the awesome transfer log. So lastly, we get to the cutover phase. So here is the phase where we're going to make the new servers look just like the old ones. And so if I want, I'm going to choose the destination network adapter. There's only one. If I want, I could put in a very specific IP address. In this case, I'm going to go with DHCP. And if I wanted to use a specific name, I could do all of that. So we're going to go through the cutover process. And now I have to do it for the second server. So again, I'm going to select the second destination network. I'm going to use DHCP. I could give it a specific name if I wanted to. And now before we do the cutover phase, we're going to click next, and of course, before we do this, we're going to validate everything because, of course, we don't want you to go through this process without making sure it's going to be successful. So you click on the validate phase. It's going to run through a whole bunch of checks because keep in mind, think about what we're doing here. We're actually renaming servers. We're re-IPing servers, and we're doing this on the fly. So what's actually happening is we're rebooting servers. While this is happening, hopefully you're kicking back with your favorite beverage, of course, because this is completely automated. You're not doing anything except typing in creds, and now we're ready. We've passed the validation phase. So now if we want to begin the cutover, we just quickly click on the start cutover phase because everything passed. So we click on cutover, and this has been time compressed because, again, we are literally restarting servers. We are renaming servers. We're actually mapping. We're doing everything we need to do to be successful. And just like that, we have migrated 2 servers. One of them was running a 2008 R2 enterprise file server. The other one is running a 2012 file server. All of this done through Admin Center. All of this done through the storage migration service built in 2019, but all of the GUI, this actually was all done on a Windows 10 client, all done remotely. Never actually touched the physical servers because this is all done using the beauty of Admin Center. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea of where we're going with Admin Center in terms of features. And what's cool about the storage migration service is you can migrate it directly to an Azure IaaS VM if you want. Generally, most people, what we're seeing is they're actually migrating to Windows Server on premises to modern servers. So for example, if they're running 2003 or 2008, we're generally seeing them migrate those to 2016 or 2019 and keeping those on-prem. Then what we're seeing is people actually using the Azure file sync to actually synchronize it up with Azure so that your file server becomes a hot cache on premises, and you can use Azure file sync to provide virtually bottomless storage with tiering up to Azure. So this is a very powerful feature, the storage migration service built in 2019. And of course, again, all of the GUI included in Admin Center. Now, one of the things I wanted to let you know about is we actually literally have some hot off the press news that just came out a couple of days ago. Most people haven't seen this yet. We just added installing a KB that will actually add a couple of new features to the storage migration service. So it's extremely popular. In fact, we've been looking at how people are using the storage migration service. Over 50% of people using storage migration service are migrating their server 2008 and 2008 R2. One of the things that we added was we added support for Windows failover clusters. So if your source and destination are clusters, we got you covered. Another thing that we added due to popular demand was Samba Linux servers. So a lot of Linux servers are out there running SMB1, which is actually a risk to your organization. It's actually a risk to everyone. And a lot of people are going, oh, great, I've got this Samba Linux thing running, SMB1. How do I migrate these things off? Well, we've actually just given you an easy way. Now you can use the storage migration server to migrate off your Samba Linux servers to 2016 or 2019. We now also offer the ability to migrate between networks. So if you have file servers on different subnets, we can take care of that for you. And now we offer the ability to migrate local groups and users, not just domain groups and users. So we've got that covered in here as well. So this is a brand new set of features we've just introduced. These are all lit up in Admin Center. So if you've got the latest version of Admin Center, you will see there are brand new options to include Samba Linux and failover clusters. All right. So one of the things I wanted to cover was what we are seeing right now in the on-premises space. We are seeing a lot of people looking at deploying hyperconverged solutions. And in fact, ESG pointed this out in April of 2019 that 54% of organizations are expecting to deploy converged and hyperconverged infrastructure over the next 12 to 18 months. Another one from IDC, 57% of hyperconverged infrastructure investment year-over-year growth from Q4 2017 to 2018. That's nearly $2 billion in the US per quarter. So that was nearly $8 billion over a single year just going on in hyperconverged infrastructure. And we are seeing tremendous adoption of hyperconverged infrastructure. So for those that aren't familiar with hyperconverged, just a quick definition of what it is. If you look how we've been doing traditional infrastructure for the last 20 years, it looks something like this. At the bottom of the stack, you've got a storage SAN, usually fiber channel or iSCSI. Usually it's some bespoke piece of hardware. It's attached to a dedicated storage fabric. So if you've got fiber channel, you've got to buy fiber channel switches. You've got fiber channel HBAs. Then you've got your hypervisors. Then on top of that, you've got miscellaneous network appliances like load balancers, gateways, firewalls, all of those types of things. And then on top of that, you've got your top of rack Ethernet switches. Well, with the number of cores now being shipped in servers, with the advent of high-speed networking, RDMA, and flash storage, we can do all of these same features, capabilities, and all of this we can do in a much smaller configuration in hyperconverged, where we have literally standard x86 servers with lots of local drives and flash, and the magic of software and Ethernet switches. So I can deliver all your network load balancing, your firewalls, your gateways, all of that done in software, all of the SAN capabilities done through storage spaces direct, and of course Ethernet switches to handle your top of rack. So for us, it's been a crazy year. We have been watching fantastic growth in our Microsoft HCI platform. We have 150% year-over-year growth 2018 to 2019. We're going to have new numbers at Ignite in the beginning of November. One thing I want to point out is this is from our telemetry. So this is from real customers. This excludes all Microsoft. So this is nothing running in Azure or nothing running in Microsoft. This is all things running in the wild. And we also excluded anything running for fewer than 7 days because we figured those are demo environments. So we think we've excluded pretty much everything to show us production workloads. And so that's pretty awesome. We are blown away by this response so far. And again, the numbers are going to be even bigger for Ignite. So Hyperconverged Management. So I'm talking about all this hyperconverged. Well, how do you manage it? Well, of course, it's going to be through Admin Center. So let's go back to Admin Center. I'm going to actually add a hyperconverged cluster management. So you can see I'm going to click on Add Hyperconverged Cluster Connection, and I'm going to type in the name of the cluster. By the way, everything you're about to see here is, again, happening in Admin Center, which, again, you already own. So we're going to add these 2 servers in this cluster, and in fact, you can see here they are. When I click to connect to the dashboard, keep in mind you're seeing the entire cluster. You're not seeing a server. You're seeing this is a small 2-node cluster. We kept it really simple here. This is a 2-node cluster. I've got a couple of alerts I can look at. I'm running some low on some storage capacity. And you can see here below, I've got 2 servers. They're healthy. Of this cluster, well, made of 2 servers, you can see next to it, it's got a total of 16 drives. So again, for the first time ever, I'm not looking at a single server. I'm looking at an entire cluster. It's got 20 virtual machines. 15 of them are running. 5 of them are turned off. I've got a total of 6 volumes. One of them is a warning and one of them is critical. If we then scroll down, you can actually see the resource usage for the entire cluster. So for a CPU standpoint, I'm using about 22% of the CPU of the cluster. I'm using about 20% of the 128 gigabytes of memory. And in terms of storage, it's 9 total terabytes and 6 of them are currently used. And if I scroll down, you can see real-time performance. Here's my cluster performance in terms of IOPS. You can see it's not doing much right now. It's currently at just 3,000 IOPS. And then latency, that's 458 microseconds. So again, that's pretty much almost nothing in terms of latency. If I want to see how it's doing in terms of the entire day, I can click on change it to day. I can hover it over and it'll actually give me the time that I had this spike. If I actually want to go even further, and take a look, for example, at the volumes on this server, I can click on volumes. And in fact, you can see, if I click on inventory, here are all of the volumes that are associated with this cluster. If I wanted to create a new volume or open a volume, I can do that. If I want to expand a volume, take a volume offline, or even delete a volume, it's all done through Admin Center. So think about what you've just seen here. You didn't see me switching to 5 different tools. You didn't see me switching to a SAN tool. You didn't see me switching to a cluster tool. You didn't see me switching to an MMC. This all happened in the confines of Admin Center. And again, this is the same tool that I was showing you earlier to manage your servers. Yes, it also manages clusters as well. And again, you already own this. So let me give you an example of how you can manage your clusters, for example, in terms of scaling. So say, for example, you bought a 2-node cluster, just like I showed you. And you go, Jeff, this is really awesome. I'm using it a ton. But in fact, I'm actually starting to run low on storage. I probably should have bought one more with more storage, or maybe I should have bought a 3-node cluster. So when you think about adding storage to a traditional cluster, and you got to get your SAN guy on the phone, you got to talk about LUN management and LUN creation, all of that nonsense. Not with what we're doing here in Admin Center and Azure Stack HCI and Storage Spaces Direct. So if I want to add another cluster, really what you want to do is you want to plug in a 3rd cluster. And then what you want to do is you actually want to rebalance your storage. So actually the 3rd server can take on that additional storage load in terms of capacity. And now you've balanced out the other 2. So let me show you what this actually looks like in Admin Center. So to scale up by adding a node, I simply click on the Add button. And I'm going to go ahead and type in the name of the 3rd node in the cluster. So here's DK47 at number 3. We're going to add that. And you can see it's going to quickly ask me for creds. Yes, I'm going to click on that. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner, we should see a little toast here that says, yep, we have just added that to the cluster. Yep, it's successfully added. And so now we have 3 nodes in the cluster. And we have one that we literally just added. So we've got different nodes in the cluster. If I then want to drill in further and take a look at the storage, you can see now I have I can click on and sort by servers. This is really cool because now you can actually see all of your disks and your storage by servers, and you can see here's the new server we just added. It has 0% being used, and if you look right here, we're actually rebalancing the storage pool. So I didn't need to call a SAN guy. I didn't need to call a disk guy. No, I literally plugged it in, and we automatically start rebalancing for you. So we've got you covered in that. So pretty cool on what we're doing with Hyperconverged. So one of the questions I get asked all the time is, hey, Jeff, this is great. Can I go build my own? Yes, you can. If you want to go build your own, take the Windows Server 2019 bits and build your own Hyperconverged cluster, you can. Do I recommend it? No, I really don't. The reason why is there's a couple of reasons. Number one, we actually work with all of these partners and actually test and validate these solutions beyond just the server certification. What we do is we work with these partners. We actually build a configuration together, and then we actually run this under stress for a couple weeks at a time. We burn this configuration to the ground. We actually push the IOPS, put storage, push the networking all the way to the max to make sure that it's tested and invalidated beyond what we normally do with just a simple server certification because it's running in a cluster. The other thing, of course, is if you buy one of these solutions from one of our partners, you call up, for example, Data-On or Dell or Lenovo or Fujitsu, and you basically say, hey, I bought an HCI solution. They're going to go, oh, we know what that is. We know what the parts are. We can help you support that. If you try and build this yourself using, what you think are your own, you pick and choose your own random parts, it's much, much different than something that's already been validated. And what generally happens is people don't always choose what we recommend in terms of the best networking adapter, for example. You're going to see that we're going to always recommend RDMA for the best performance and scalability, et cetera. So, if you want to run it in test dev, you want to kick the tires on it, go for it. But when it's time to actually run in production, please consider one of these HCI solutions from our select partners. We have this awesome marketplace. If you go to microsoft.com/HCI, you can choose your favorite OEM, and you can see they've got a bunch of different solutions. For example, Lenovo's got one here. It's all flash in the middle. You can see that sucker that one is just for lightning performance. You got one on the right-hand side called the Balance, which actually has flash and spinning disks because we automatically tier the storage for folks that need a little bit more capacity. So there's different ways you can go there. All right, finally, let's talk about hybrid. So I've talked about Admin Center for managing servers. I've talked about Admin Center for managing your hyperconverged. Finally, let's get to how Admin Center can help you with your hybrid scenarios, because again, that's where the vast majority of folks are looking at their strategy going forward. So one of my favorite features is this one. So one of the things people ask me all the time is, hey, Jeff, sure, my data center, we've got, express route into Azure, we got performance, we're good there. But my branch offices or my smaller environments, maybe not so much. Someone will tell me, Jeff, I got some branch offices and I don't want to have to buy a hardware VPN or configure this and set this up in, 50 or 100 or even 500 branch offices. That gets expensive really quickly. Is there a way we can do that in software? And so we actually have a point-to-site VPN. That's already built in Windows Server. We've had this for ages. However, setting this up before Admin Center, quite honestly, was pretty brutal. You have to create the gateway subnet, create an Azure public IP, figure out the client address space, create an Azure virtual network gateway, create a root certificate, obtain a public key file for the root certificate. And if that hasn't broken your spirit, if you're not ready to just begin weeping there's even more. Okay, this continues. There's lots to get this configured. And I sat down and spoke with one of my colleagues, Greg. Greg is a network genius. He's been working on networking forever. He knows all the ins and outs of this. And I said, Greg, how long did this take you? You're a networking expert. And he said, well, Jeff, the first time it took me, like 90 minutes, 25 steps. It took me quite a bit. I'm like, Greg, if it took you 90 minutes, this would take me a week. I said, we can make this easier, can't we? He said, absolutely. So now with Admin Center, this is how you set up an Azure Network Adapter. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over here to the PowerShell tool. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ping an Azure IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in here 172.17.3.4. I'm going to ping this so you can see that, in fact, the request timed out. I don't have access to Azure, so it has failed. So I'm going to switch on over here to the network tool. and I'm going to click on this thing called the Azure Network Adapter. And what we're going to actually do is we're actually going to create a point-to-site VPN up into Azure. And one thing I want to do is we're actually going to count clicks because I want to show you just how easy this is. So click 1 is we're going to click on Add Azure Network Adapter. Click number 2 is we're going to select the subscription. Then the location is click 3. Then we're going to choose the virtual network. That's click number 4. Click number 5 is the last one, and that is create. So now we are creating an Azure Network Adapter, which is a point-to-site VPN, and I am connecting into Azure. I didn't use any PowerShell. I didn't leave Admin Center a single time. Everything is ready. I am already connected to Azure. I'm going to go right back here into PowerShell, and I'm going to copy in that IP address one more time. I'm going to ping it, and you can see just like that, I have secure connectivity in Azure because it just works. So that is just taken care of for you. So now I've given you hybrid connectivity in Azure, so you have access to your resources, and you didn't need any hardware to do that. Lastly, let's talk about protecting your servers. So again, wherever my servers are running, as long as I have access to the server, I can do all of these cool things, and I can use, for example, I can actually back up my servers into Azure as well. So here is Azure Backup, and again, I'm in Admin Center. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to log into Azure Backup, and you can see I can log into the portal, which I've done. I can set up my Azure Backup. I can choose my Azure Data Center, which is the Western United States. So that's already been done for me. Now I select, am I going to back up the system state and the C volume? You can see it tells me it's going to take about 25 gigabytes of storage. I can then choose how I'm going to back it up. So I'm going to back it up daily and retain it for 30 days. And you can see I have different options there. And then lastly, step 4, I'm going to enter an encryption passphrase. So why am I doing that? Well, the reason why I'm doing that is ransomware. So if you look at what's going on these days, ransomware, as we all know, is a phenomenon that's taking over everywhere, and the bad guys are doing everything they can to get in your organization and not only get access and encrypt your data, but actually delete your backups as well so that you can't restore. Well, if it requires a passphrase to actually do a delete, then you're actually covered. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply here, and it enters the encryption passphrase. So now I'm actually setting up the Azure Backup agent on the server. You'll notice I'm not touching the server at all. This is all done remotely through Admin Center. And you can see here's the Azure Backup pane for the server. You can see here's the Recovery Services Vault. So if I actually click on this, this will actually take us to the exact right location in Azure. And the beauty of this is because Azure has so many things, it's easy to kind of get lost here. So just by clicking on this, it will actually log me into Azure, and it will take me to the Recovery Services Vault. Here's the backup location. And in fact, you can see right here, here are the backup items. There are 2 backup items. So if I click on this, it'll show me, oh yeah, here's what we just set up from a backup perspective. And in fact, you can see it's being successfully backed up. C:// the whole volume and the system state. So you can see here the subscription ID. I can see my next scheduled backups. And if I want to back up right now, I can click on backup, and actually I can perform a full backup right now. And this is important, for example, when someone says, hey, we're going to actually run a new version, we're going to deploy a new version in production, we're going to run an upgrade or an update, you can do that backup. If you want to see your running jobs, you can see the list of jobs, you can see alerts and notifications, you can see all of these points in time. If you want to see recovery points, so you can go back to a specific recovery point to get something, you can do that. And of course, the overview pane takes you right back here. Now, again, I mentioned to you that whole notion of the encryption passphrase. So what happens if I realize, you know what, I did this backup and turns out I don't need it. In fact, I can go and safely delete it. Okay, no problem. So I head on over here to delete backup. Click on that, and you notice the first thing it says, well, before I do that, you're going to need to type in your secure passphrase. So this way, this prevents me from accidentally deleting something, or it keeps malware from doing something bad and taking out your backups that are stored up in Azure. So we got you covered there. So these are just a few of the cool things that we have in terms of hybrid. I because of time, I don't have time to show you more. I showed you the Azure Network Adapter. I showed you Azure Backup. We also have VM replication with site recovery. You can also integrate with update management. I showed you the storage migration service. I showed you that. I didn't get a chance to show you Azure File Sync. We also have storage replica to Azure. We have integration with Azure Monitor and a whole bunch more coming. So the thing I want to leave you with is, by the way, I've only shown you a couple of these things, and there's a whole bunch more already, and there's a whole bunch more coming. And again, you already own all of this because you have Admin Center. So because I knew I was running low on time, I also wanted to make sure you're aware we have a ton more content. We have the Windows Server Summit. We did this a few months ago, recorded about 8 hours in the studio. There's a ton more content on what's new in Admin Center, in System Center, in Azure Stack HCI, in software-defined computing, and storage spaces direct, in Hyper-V, and SDN, and so much more. So if you want to know even more, you can head on over, just do a search for Windows Server Summit 2019, and it's all available so that you can watch it on your free time. Lots of great content. So with that, again, I know I'm a little over time here, but I just wanted to again say thank you guys so much for coming out. I know the timing was a little bit different that you're normally used to, but it really is a pleasure. And I hope that you've learned a lot about Admin Center. And most importantly, I hope that you go out and download it, get it installed, and tell your friends about it.
Thank you for joining us at the IG Pro community. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Microsoft and Sorrison, your System Center experts. If you want to see more, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to get notified when we put up new content. And feel free to leave your suggestions for future events in the comments below. For more details on upcoming events or to join us live at our next meeting, join our meetup community at the link provided.